Have you ever wondered, what if one small act of kindness could change your entire life? What if, one night, you helped a stranger, someone helpless, someone drunk, someone the world already adored, and the next morning, that same person had the power to destroy you or save you? Would you still choose to do the right thing? This is the story of Noah Grant, a black waiter in one of New York's most luxurious restaurants. One night, he helped a woman who had fallen dressed in diamonds, drowning in wine. The next morning, he was fired for touching a VIP guest. But that woman wasn't just anyone. She was a billionaire heiress. And what started as an act of compassion turned into a storm that would challenge everything Noah believed about justice, dignity, and self-worth. Imagine being in his shoes, standing in a room full of power, knowing that every move you make could be used against you. Would you stay silent to keep your job or speak up and lose everything? This isn't just a story about class or race. It's about the invisible line between doing what's safe and doing what's right. It's about how a single moment can reveal who we really are. If you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever wondered whether kindness still matters in a cruel world, this story is for you. Stay with me. And before we begin, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because sometimes one story can remind us all why we should never stop believing in decency. New York City never really sleeps. It only exhales between heartbeats at 158A. The Glass Room, an award-winning rooftop restaurant in Midtown, was breathing slow, wrapped in silver light and the faint scent of white wine. Noah Grant wiped the last table of the night. His sleeves were rolled halfway, showing the edges of old burn scars from kitchen work years ago. He moved quietly, with a rhythm that made tiredness look graceful. For him, silence after midnight was a kind of prayer. He glanced toward the bar. A handful of executives were still talking in polished laughter. Their suits gleamed under the chandeliers like armor. Among them sat a young woman in a shimmering silver dress, her hair the color of champagne. She laughed too loudly, then leaned forward, a glass slipping from her hand. Red wine burst across the marble floor like a wound. Every head turned. No one moved. The maître d' frowned. The bartender froze, eyes flicking to the surveillance camera. The city outside pulsed through the windows, yellow cabs, red lights, everything watching but no one helping. Noah hesitated for half a second, then walked forward. "Ma'am." His voice was calm, low. The woman blinked, dazed. She tried to stand, but her heel twisted. She collapsed again, her purse spilling cash and keys across the tiles. Laughter, thin, embarrassed, broke from one corner of the room. Noah knelt beside her. "It's okay. Just breathe." He picked up the keys, slid them into her purse, and offered his hand. For a moment, she looked straight at him, eyes sharp, not drunk at all, more like studying him. Then her body sagged, pretending to lose balance. He caught her shoulders before she hit the floor. "Easy, I've got you." The maitre d' stepped forward, whisper shouting, "Noah, step back, now." But Noah didn't let go. He steadied her until she could stand. The smell of perfume and wine mixed in the air, sweet, dizzying, like contradiction itself. "Call her a car," he said quietly. The maître d' shook his head. "You've done enough." Two security men approached, guiding the woman toward the elevator. She didn't resist. Yet just before the doors closed, she turned her head slightly. Their eyes met again. Hers held something that looked a lot like gratitude or maybe curiosity. Then the elevator doors slid shut, Noah exhaled. Around him, conversation returned in soft ripples. The laughter restarted, cautious, pretending nothing had happened. He returned to his table, picked up the damp cloth, and began to wipe again. Slower this time. He could feel the stairs behind him. He could almost hear the whisper. Why did he touch her? But to Noah, it wasn't about touching. It was about seeing. In that glittering room full of money and mirrors, someone had fallen. He simply couldn't pretend not to see. By 2:20, the guests were gone. Only the cleaning crew and the soft hum of refrigerators remained. Noah hung his apron on the hook, straightened the stack of menus, and checked the tip jar half empty, as usual. He stood by the window, 36 floors above the street. Below, Manhattan blinked like a circuit board of greed and grace. He thought about his mother working the night shift at the Bronx hospital. She'd say, "Kindness isn't something you plan, son. It's something you don't stop yourself from doing." He smiled faintly, hearing her voice in his head. Then he left the restaurant through the staff exit. Outside, the air smelled of wet asphalt and jasmine from a florist next door. He walked the 5 blocks to his small apartment, shoes echoing against the concrete. His reflection followed him in the dark windows, tall, thin, tired, but upright. Somewhere behind those towers, someone would wake up tomorrow and remember that a waiter helped her. Or maybe she wouldn't. Maybe kindness disappears in places like that. At his door, Noah paused. His hands trembled slightly as he fit the key. He didn't know why. Maybe because for the first time in a long while, he'd done something purely instinctive, something that might cost him. He turned off the lights, sat on the edge of his bed, and looked at the city one last time through the blinds. The skyline shimmered, indifferent, perfect. And in that quiet moment between exhaustion and sleep, one thought crossed his mind. In a world that worships appearances, being human might be the only rebellion left. Morning came without mercy. The light that slid through Noah Grant's blinds felt colder than usual, like a spotlight he hadn't asked for. His phone buzzed before his alarm, an unknown number, local area code. He answered, still half asleep. Noah Grant, a clipped voice, asked, "Yes, Mr. Cole would like to see you immediately. 3rd floor conference room. 10. The call ended before he could speak. He sat there for a moment, staring at the floor. Mr. Cole, the glass room's general manager, a man who smiled like a knife, thin, polished, sharp at the edges. Noah knew that room. No one was ever called there for congratulations. He arrived 15 minutes early, wearing the same pressed white shirt and black vest from last night. The front desk receptionist wouldn't meet his eyes. She simply said, "They're waiting for you," and gestured toward the elevator. The conference room was all glass and chrome. Sunlight poured in, reflecting off the table like interrogation lights. Ethan Cole sat at the far end, scrolling through his tablet. 2 assistant managers flanked him, silent as statues. "Noah," Ethan said, smiling without warmth, "take a seat." Noah sat, careful not to touch anything. His palms were dry. Ethan tapped the screen. A still image appeared on the large monitor. It was Noah, crouched beside Celeste Morgan, his hand supporting her back as she leaned forward. The camera's angle was low, the lighting dramatic, almost predatory. "Recognize this?" Ethan asked. Noah stared at it. "That was last night." "Yes," Ethan said. At approximately 2 o'clock, you engaged physically with a VIP guest, Ms. Celeste Morgan. She's the daughter of Richard Morgan, the primary shareholder of this restaurant group. She was intoxicated at the time. I helped her up, Noah said quietly. Ethan leaned back, crossing one leg over the other. You touched her. While she was in a vulnerable state, that, Noah, is not considered helping. It's considered a breach of professional conduct. Noah's jaw tightened. You'd rather I let her fall on the floor. Ethan's smile deepened. Slow and cruel. I'd rather you remembered your place. The room went silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioning. One of the assistants slid a folder across the table. Inside was a printed termination letter, dated that morning. You're dismissing me, Noah said flatly. Ethan folded his hands, effective immediately. We can either make this a quiet exit, or, if you insist on contesting it, HR can open a file that might affect your future employment. It's your choice. Noah looked at the still image on the screen again, frozen in time. His gesture looked almost incriminating. Without context, kindness had become accusation. He felt something cold and heavy settle in his chest. I gave 3 years here, he said softly. Not one complaint, not one late shift. And this is what I get, Ethan shrugged. Standards, Noah. The glass room represents refinement, discretion. You don't fit that image anymore. Noah stood up. No, I guess I don't. He walked out without waiting for permission. Outside, the hallway smelled faintly of bleach and lemon polish. Each step felt slower, heavier, until he reached the staff locker room. His locker door creaked open. Inside hung his apron, his notepad, and a small metal tag engraved with his name, Noah Grant, Service with Integrity. He unclipped it, stared at the words for a long time, then dropped it into his pocket. On the bench beside him lay a paper bag with his lunch, still untouched, tuna sandwich, apple, small bottle of water. He threw the apple into the trash and left. The city hit him like noise car horns, chatter, the hiss of buses. He walked aimlessly down 8th Avenue until he reached a quiet street corner. His reflection in a store window looked like someone else. He dialed his mother, Martha Grant, speaking. Her voice came through, layered with fatigue. The background hum of hospital machines filled the line. "Mom," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "They fired me." A pause. Then, gently, "For what?" "For helping a woman who fell." He heard her stop moving. The faint squeak of her shoes on the hospital floor went silent. "And because I'm me," he added bitterly. Another pause. Then she spoke, low and steady, the way she did when stitching truth into pain. "You weren't wrong. Noah, you were just wrong to think they'd let you be right." He closed his eyes. "I thought if I worked hard, stayed quiet, played by the rules." She interrupted softly. "Their rules were never written for you, baby." The words hit him harder than any dismissal could when the call ended. Noah stood there for a long time. Phone still pressed to his ear, though the line had gone dead. A cold wind swept down the avenue. Somewhere above, a billboard advertised the glass room's new refined experience. He looked at it until the image blurred. He went home. The apartment was small bare walls, one wooden chair, a coffee pot that leaked slightly. He sat by the window, staring out at the gray skyline. His hands shook, not from anger, not even from sadness, from something else, something that felt like quiet disbelief. He thought about last night again. How everyone had watched but no one had moved. How fear had disguised itself as professionalism. He opened his small notebook. It was mostly empty except for shift schedules and grocery lists. On the first blank page, he wrote, "Kindness seen through the wrong lens becomes a threat." He stared at the words until they blurred. That evening, he packed his uniform into a box labeled "Old Things." He hesitated, then added the name tag, setting it gently on top. He taped the box shut and shoved it under the bed. For hours, he sat in the dark, the city lights drawing faint lines across his wall. At some point, the power flickered and his reflection appeared in the window, his own eyes looking back, tired but not broken. He whispered to the glass, "If I stay quiet now, who'll be next?" The city didn't answer. It just kept humming, pretending not to see. By midnight, Noah had stopped shaking. The anger in him had cooled into something sharper, quieter, like a blade being forged. He made himself a cup of cheap coffee, sipped it slowly, and looked again at the skyline. For the first time, he didn't feel small beneath it. He felt awake. And, though he didn't know it yet, that quiet awakening, the moment when a good man decides not to disappear, was the first step toward everything that would come after. The week that followed felt endless. Time in New York usually moved fast. But for Noah Grant, every hour seemed to drag like an anchor through wet sand. He tried to keep a routine. He woke at 6, made coffee, read the job listings, and sent out applications to every restaurant within 5 miles of his small apartment in Queens. Most didn't reply. A few called back politely to say they were not hiring at the moment. One manager told him, "We've had some image issues lately, so we're looking for front staff that match our brand." He didn't ask what match meant. He already knew. By the 5th day, his savings were thinning. The rent notice on his fridge stared at him like a clock counting down. At night, he tried not to think about the glass room. He told himself it didn't matter, that he'd move on, that maybe he was meant for something different. But when he turned off the lights, he still saw that chandelier reflected in her wine glass. The moment everything had shifted, then, one night, the phone buzzed at 2:04 a.m. Unknown number. He hesitated before answering. Noah Grant. The voice was female, low, calm, familiar. "Yes. Who's this? Meet me tomorrow. 2 p. Corner of 61st and Columbus. Alone." He sat up. "Wait, who is this?" But the line had already gone dead. He stared at the dark screen for a long time. The city outside was quiet, except for the low hum of traffic in the distance. He thought about calling back, but the number was blocked. He tried texting. "Who are you? How did you get my number?" No reply. He set the phone down, but his hands wouldn't stop trembling. He knew that voice. He just couldn't decide if he wanted to hear it again. Sleep never came. When morning light spilled through the blinds, he made strong coffee and stared at the steam rising from the mug. It twisted upward like smoke from something burning away. He thought of his mother. She had always said, "Sometimes the universe sends you strange invitations." Noah, not every door that opens looks safe, but some of them are the ones you're meant to walk through. At 1:30, he left his apartment and took the train into Manhattan. The sky was gray, threatening rain. He arrived early, standing beneath a rusted bus sign, watching taxis slide through puddles on Columbus Avenue. At exactly 2, she appeared, Celeste Morgan. No sunglasses this time, no bodyguards, no makeup, No diamonds, just a camel coat, her hair tied back in a low knot, and an expression he couldn't read. She walked straight toward him as if she'd expected him to be there. "You came," she said. "I almost didn't." He replied, "I know." For a moment they stood in silence. Then she nodded toward a small cafe across the street. "Let's talk somewhere less visible." They sat near the back, beside a rain-streaked window. The waiter recognized her but said nothing, only poured coffee and left quickly. Noah leaned forward. "Why did you call me Celeste?" Looked down at her cup. "Because you didn't deserve what happened." "That's not an answer," he said. She met his eyes. "You think I was drunk that night, don't you?" He hesitated. "You fell off a bar stool. You could barely stand." "I wasn't drunk," she said quietly. "Not even close." Noah frowned. "Then why I wanted to see if anyone in that place still had a conscience." Her words landed like a stone dropped into still water. "What I've been watching my father's company for months. Things have been changing. People quietly disappearing. Good people. And Ethan Cole." She said his name like it was poison, "has been cleaning house before my father sells the dining group to investors in Dubai." "You know what cleaning house means?" Noah didn't answer. "It means removing faces that don't fit the brand." She continued. "Anyone not white, not born into the right zip code, quietly replaced. They call it standardization. I call it sanitizing humanity." Noah leaned back, staring at her. He wanted to believe she was telling the truth. But he also knew the kind of people who lived in her world, how easily they played with others' lives like poker chips. "Why tell me this?" he asked. She looked at him for a long time. "Because you didn't play along. You saw me fall, and you helped, even though you knew it could ruin you. You didn't wait to see who was watching. You acted like a human being." Her voice cracked slightly on that last sentence, but she didn't look away. Noah folded his hands. "What do you want from me?" "I want to expose what's happening," she said. "But I can't do it alone. If I speak up, they'll silence me. My father owns everything: media, lawyers, reputation. But you, Noah, you have something they can't predict." He gave a half smile, a lack of power. "No," she said softly, "a clean record and a reason to fight." Rain began tapping against the window. The cafe's light flickered as thunder rolled outside. For a few seconds, the noise filled the silence between them. He stared into his coffee, thinking, "You really think I can help you take down your father's company?" "I don't need you to take it down," she said. "I need you to help me save what's worth saving." There was something raw in her tone, something that sounded almost like regret. He didn't answer right away. The idea of going back into that world, of facing the people who'd humiliated him, made his stomach tighten. But something else stirred in him too, a slow, dangerous sense of purpose. "Finally," he said, "if I do this, it's not for revenge." "I know," she said. "That's why I asked you." They left the cafe as the rain eased into drizzle. Celeste handed him a small manila envelope before stepping into a waiting car. "Inside," she said, "you'll find copies of internal memos and financial drafts. They'll help you understand what Ethan's doing. Read them carefully. I'll contact you again soon." He started to speak, but the car door shut, and she was gone. Noah stood there on the sidewalk, envelope in hand, watching her car vanish into traffic. Back at his apartment, he opened it. Inside were several printed documents, emails between Ethan Cole and upper management, coded notes about staff adjustment cycles, and one sheet labeled Projected Equity Sale Maison Hospitality Group. In the margin, someone, Celeste, probably had circled a line in red ink. It read, Reinforce brand uniformity before Q3 investor review. Eliminate non-conforming personnel. He sat back in his chair. His throat felt dry. It wasn't paranoia anymore. It was a plan, and he had just become part of the counterattack. He stared at the city skyline through his window again, lights blurring in the drizzle. Somewhere in those towers, a system existed that rewarded cruelty and called it elegance. And for the first time since losing his job, Noah felt something that wasn't anger or despair. He felt awake, not the kind of awake that coffee brings, but the kind that lives in the bones when a person finally sees how things really work. He didn't know where this path would lead. He only knew he couldn't walk away from it. Not now. Not after what he'd read. Before going to bed, he took out his notebook again and wrote one line at the bottom of the page from last week. Maybe the fall wasn't hers. Maybe it was the system's and I just happened to catch it before it shattered. He closed the book, turned off the lamp, and sat in the darkness for a moment longer, listening to the rain. Somewhere deep down, he knew that message at 2 a.m. had changed everything, and that the woman he helped wasn't just a stranger anymore. She was the beginning of a storm. The rain had not stopped all morning. It came down steady, like the city was trying to wash itself clean. Noah Grant stood at the corner of 61st and Columbus again. Collar pulled up, a cheap umbrella trembling in the wind. He'd barely slept. The documents Celeste had given him were still spread across his table at home pages of corporate jargon that all said the same quiet truth. People like him had been erased from the company's future. He had tried to convince himself to ignore it, to throw the envelope away, but the words kept crawling back into his thoughts. Eliminate non-conforming personnel. That line sat in his chest like a weight. At 9 sharp, his phone buzzed. A message, same place, 10 minutes. He crossed to the cafe from before. Inside, the air smelled of espresso and rain-soaked coats. The same barista from yesterday looked up, recognized him, and nodded toward the corner booth. Celeste Morgan was already there, her coat damp from the storm, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea. This time, there was no hesitation in her eyes, only exhaustion, and something like resolve. "You read the papers," she said. "I did." Noah replied, "You were right." Her lips curved faintly. "I usually am, but it doesn't make it easier." He sat opposite her. "You said you wanted to expose them. What's your plan?" Celeste took a deep breath. "My father doesn't know yet. Ethan's been acting on his own mostly, but he's doing it under the company's name, which means if this goes public, it will destroy everything. My father's empire, his reputation, even the restaurants that still treat their workers fairly, it'll all burn. Maybe it needs to," Noah said quietly. She looked up sharply. "You think the whole system should collapse?" He hesitated. "I think the parts that build themselves on people's pain deserve to." She nodded slowly, as if she understood that kind of weariness. "Then maybe we're on the same side." They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the rain against the window. "Finally," she said, "there's someone you need to meet. Who? Her name is Ava Kim. She's a civil rights attorney, small firm in Brooklyn. She's helped former employees before people who were fired quietly, like you. She doesn't care about money. She cares about proof. Celeste pulled a small card from her pocket and slid it across the table. The card was slightly worn. The ink faded. Ava Kim, Legal Advocacy and Social Equity Foundation. "She doesn't know I'm coming," Celeste said, "but if you tell her I sent you, she'll listen." Noah studied the card. "And what will you do keep digging? My father's board is meeting soon to finalize the sale. Once it's signed, everything becomes harder to trace. I need time. You need a voice." Noah folded the card carefully and slipped it into his wallet. When he looked up, Celeste was watching him, not the way she had in the glass room that night, but differently, with something like trust. She said softly, "When I saw you reach out that night, you didn't hesitate. I wanted to remember what that looked like. Most people in my world wait for someone else to act." He gave a faint smile. "Maybe I'm not most people." "No," she said. "You're not." Outside, the rain lightened into mist. They left the cafe together, standing briefly under the same awning before parting ways. She walked toward a black car waiting at the curb. Before stepping in, she turned and said, "Noah, be careful. They won't stop at firing you if they realize you're involved." He didn't answer. He just nodded, and she disappeared behind tinted glass. The rest of the day blurred. The subway to Brooklyn smelled of wet shoes and coffee. He found Ava Kim's office on the second floor of a narrow brick building between a laundromat and a deli. A faded blue sign above the door read, "Legal help for everyone." Inside, the place was cluttered but alive stacks of files, handwritten notes pinned to corkboards, an old kettle steaming on a side table. A young assistant waved him toward an open door. Ava Kim looked up from her desk. Mid-30s, sharp eyes behind round glasses, her hair pulled into a messy bun. "Mr. Grant?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "Celeste Morgan sent me." That caught her attention. She gestured to the chair across from her. "Then you must have an interesting story." He handed her the documents. She scanned them quickly, her expression darkening with each page. When she looked up, her voice had changed. "Do you know what this is proof?" Noah said. "It's more than that. It's a map." She replied, "A paper trail of corporate discrimination masked as business optimization. You could build a case around this if we had witnesses." "There are others," Noah said, "people who were fired for the same reasons. I remember their names." "Good," Ava said. "You find them. I'll prepare a draft complaint, but we need to move fast. If they sense you're organizing, they'll bury the evidence." For the first time in weeks, Noah felt purpose settle into his bones again. He spent the next 2 days calling former co-workers. Some were hesitant to talk, afraid of retaliation. Others didn't even answer. But a few agreed to meet a line cook named Marcus, a dishwasher named Maria, an old maitre d' named Henry. Each had the same story: quiet termination, vague reasons, no severance. When he relayed their accounts to Ava, she only nodded. Patterns make cases. Keep going. Late that night, Noah walked home through light drizzle. The city lights reflected off the puddles like broken glass. He passed the glass room from across the street. Through the tall windows, he could see the new staff uniform, polished, every one of them white. He stood there for a long time, invisible on the opposite sidewalk. Then he turned away and kept walking. The next morning, he found another message on his phone. "We need to talk. Urgent. C." He called back immediately. Celeste's voice was strained. "They know someone's leaking documents. Ethan's furious. He's ordered an internal review of employee communications." I think he suspects me." "Then stop," Noah said. "It's too dangerous." She laughed softly, bitterly. "You think danger scares me? I grew up watching men like him destroy people and call it business. I'm tired of pretending not to notice." He could hear something in her tone, a mix of defiance and fear. "What can I do?" he asked. "Keep gathering names. If we can get at least 10 verified terminations that match the pattern, Ava can file before the board meeting. That's our window." "Celeste," she interrupted. "Noah, don't thank me. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it because you reminded me what decency looks like." Before he could respond, the line went dead again. He stood there, phone in hand, feeling the storm brewing around him. By evening, he was back in Ava's office with a list of names. She pinned them on a board with colored notes, each color a story, each story a life. "This isn't just a case," she said quietly. "It's a mirror of the city." Noah looked at the board and saw faces, voices, memories, the laughter in the kitchen, the music during cleaning hours, the quiet pride they all shared before being erased. He realized then that what they were doing wasn't only about the glass room or Ethan Cole. It was about everyone who'd ever been told they didn't belong. Rain started again outside, tapping softly on the window. Ava looked up. "You're ready for this?" "Noah." He didn't hesitate. "I was ready the night they fired me." She smiled faintly. "Then let's make them remember your name." That night, as he walked home, the city lights shimmered like tiny promises. Somewhere out there, Celeste was fighting her own battle from inside, and he, just a waiter without a uniform, had become something unexpected. Not a victim, not a rebel, a witness with purpose. And in the rain, purpose was enough. The city looked different when you were searching for ghosts. Every street Noah Grant walked down seemed to whisper fragments of laughter, music, and noise from people who weren't there anymore, people who had been erased quietly, as if they never existed. He spent the next week moving through neighborhoods most of the rich in Manhattan never saw Harlem. Queens, the Bronx places filled with color, rhythm, and the smell of fried food and rain-soaked pavement. He carried a worn notebook and a promise to himself to find everyone who had been standardized out of existence. The first person he found was Marcus Reed. Marcus had been a sous chef at the Glass Room for 4 years. When Noah arrived at his small apartment above a laundromat in Harlem, Marcus opened the door wearing an apron splattered with paint instead of grease. "Noah," he said, surprised. "Didn't expect to see you." "Man, I heard what happened," Noah said. "I'm putting together something. A case?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "A case like court, like justice," Noah said. Marcus laughed. "But it wasn't cruel, just tired. Justice doesn't pay rent. Brother, I tried fighting them once. HR said I had attitude problems. You believe that I worked double shifts? I cooked for people who didn't even look at me." "I believe you," Noah said. They sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by canvases covered in half-finished paintings. Marcus had turned his kitchen into a studio. The smell of acrylic filled the air. "I paint now," Marcus said, lighting a cigarette. "Keeps me sane. But, yeah, I'll talk. I'll sign whatever you need." Noah wrote his statement carefully, every word like a small wound healing. By the time he left, Marcus handed him a rolled-up painting. "For you," he said, "you reminded me that anger can make something beautiful." The next day, Noah met Maria Gonzalez in Queens. She was working at a small bakery, her hands covered in flour, her accent still strong and unapologetic. When she saw him, she wiped her hands on her apron and hugged him without hesitation. Mi hijo, she said softly, using the word for son. I thought you forgot us. Never, Noah said. She told him how she'd been fired after 5 years because a customer complained she didn't sound professional. She had begged to stay, even offered to take night shifts. They replaced her with a college student 2 weeks later. I cried for a month, Maria said, but then my daughter said, Mama, maybe you were too kind for that place. Maybe she's right. Noah recorded her story, his throat tight the whole time. When he left, she packed him a bag of pastries. You'll need strength, she said. Fighting takes hunger. He smiled and promised to visit again. By the weekend, he had 6 names in his notebook. 6 people who had lost everything quietly, some too scared to speak, others too tired to care. But all of them remembered Ethan Cole. They remembered his rules about presentation. They remembered his laughter when someone stumbled. Noah returned to Ava Kim's office that Monday, the pages damp from the rain. She spread them across her desk, scanning each one like a detective piecing together a puzzle. This, she said, is more than enough to start. If Celeste can get us one internal memo confirming the directive, we can move forward legally. What happens then? Noah asked. Then, Ava said, we stop being invisible. Later that evening, Celeste called. Her voice was hushed. I got what we need. Ethan sent an email to regional managers confirming the personnel streamlining exact wording. I'll send it tonight. Are you safe? Noah asked. A pause. Then, for now, but he's watching me. If something happens, promise me you'll keep going. I promise, Noah said. He hung up and sat in silence for a while, staring at Marcus's painting propped against his wall. It showed a faceless waiter standing beneath a chandelier that looked like falling stars. The longer he looked, the more he saw himself in it. The next morning, Ava filed the preliminary complaint. The case name Grant versus Maison Hospitality Group. By noon, whispers spread across the company. Someone had challenged the untouchables. Ethan Cole's calm smile reportedly cracked for the first time. That evening, Noah received an anonymous email. You don't know what you're playing with. Drop it, or it'll drop you. He didn't reply. He forwarded it to Ava instead. She wrote back 2 words, expected, ignore, but he couldn't. He knew what fear looked like. It was the same silence that had kept him bowed for years. He refused to bow again. He kept meeting people, one by one. An older dishwasher named Henry Lee told him how Ethan once told him his hands weren't elegant enough for guest areas. A bartender named Sophie said she was fired for lack of aesthetic cohesion. A hostess named Layla showed him a pay stub that proved wage theft. Each story added a new color to the portrait of injustice they were painting. Celeste met him again 3 days later, in a small diner near Central Park. She looked pale, her hands shaking slightly as she stirred her coffee. Ethan's closing in, she said. He suspects the leak is internal. He's going through emails, tracking who's printed what, then stop for now. Noah said, You've done enough. Her eyes lifted to his. If I stop now, everything we've built disappears. He leaned forward. Celeste, I don't want you to get hurt. Her smile was faint, almost tragic. I've been hurt before. What scares me isn't pain. It's living with the kind of silence that lets people like Ethan win. They sat quietly for a moment. Then she reached across the table, touching his hand. Noah, When this ends, no matter how, it has to mean something. Promise me that. I promise," he said again. The next day, the first article appeared online. Small, quiet, buried under bigger headlines. Former employees allege discrimination at Maison Hospitality Group. It didn't name Celeste, but it mentioned Noah by name. His phone buzzed constantly, calls from unknown numbers, reporters, strangers offering sympathy or suspicion. He ignored them all. But late that night, when he stepped outside for air, he noticed a black car parked across the street, engine off, windows tinted. He stood there for a long minute, watching. The car didn't move. He went back inside, locked the door, and told himself it was nothing. The next morning, the car was gone. He didn't tell Celeste or Ava. Some things, he thought, were better left unspoken until they mattered. As the week ended, the city began to feel heavier, like the air before a thunderstorm. Yet, in the middle of that tension, Noah felt something else growing momentum. He walked through Harlem again, visited Marcus, Maria, and Henry. He told them about the case, about Ava, about how their voices were now part of something bigger. Maria cried softly. Marcus laughed and slapped Noah on the back. "You're building something, man. Don't let them scare you out of it." Noah looked around the small apartment, at the art on the walls, the smell of coffee and life. "I won't," he said. "Not this time." That night, when he returned home, he found a letter slipped under his door, no name, just a single line written in neat handwriting. "You're not the only one watching." He folded it carefully and placed it in his notebook, next to the first page he'd written weeks ago. The rain started again outside, soft and steady. He looked out the window, the city lights reflecting in his eyes, and whispered to himself, then let them watch. Because for the first time in a long time, he wasn't afraid of being seen. He was fighting for everyone who couldn't be. The sound of rain had become the rhythm of Noah Grant's days. It followed him through subway tunnels, coffee shops, and quiet streets, a steady heartbeat behind every step. But that morning, it was the sound of typing that filled the air. Ava Kim's office looked like organized chaos. Stacks of folders covered the desks, sticky notes layered like feathers on every wall. The air was thick with the smell of instant noodles and burnt coffee. Noah sat across from her, watching as she flipped through files faster than he could follow. "You've been busy," he said. Ava didn't look up. "Busy keeps us safe. The more paper we have, the harder it is for them to bury us." On the board behind her, names and dates covered a large map of New York. Red pins marked where each former employee lived. Blue ones marked restaurants under Maison Hospitality Group. The board looked like a constellation of injustice. "Here's the thing," Ava said finally, tapping her pen on the table. "We have testimony. We have termination letters. We even have Celeste's internal memo. But that's not enough for the kind of case that forces a corporation to change. We need hard evidence recordings, written orders, or direct proof that Ethan Cole gave those instructions intentionally." Noah frowned. "How do we get that Ava's side?" "We don't. Someone inside does." Noah knew immediately who she meant. Celeste. She's the only one close enough to access executive correspondence. If she can get us an official email or meeting transcript, something signed by Ethan, then we'll have more than noise. We'll have a detonator. Noah hesitated. She's already in danger. He's watching her. Ava's voice softened. "I know, but if she's willing, it might be our only chance." He didn't reply. He just nodded. That night, he met Celeste at a quiet bar in the East Village. It wasn't like the glass room, no chandeliers, no marble floors, just scratched tables, warm light, and the faint hum of a jazz record playing in the background. Celeste wore a dark coat, her hair tucked under a scarf. She looked tired, but there was fire in her eyes. "You got Ava's message," she said. "I did. She thinks you can get what we need." Celeste sipped her drink, thinking, "I can. The executive team is meeting in 2 days to finalize the sale. Ethan will have to present a summary report of HR operations. That report will include the staff reduction plans, the real ones. If I can access his laptop or his assistant's account, I can send you a copy." "That's dangerous," Noah said quietly. "So is silence," she replied. He studied her face. "Why are you doing this, Celeste?" "You don't owe me anything." Her eyes softened. "It's not about owing. It's about being tired of watching people like you pay for mistakes you never made. My father used to say that good business means no guilt. I believed him once, but guilt is the only proof that we still have a conscience." She smiled faintly. "Maybe this is my way of finding mine." Noah didn't know what to say. He just nodded, because sometimes silence carried more truth than words. 2 days later, while Ethan Cole and the board gathered in their glass tower, Celeste slipped into her office on the 24th floor. The hallway was silent except for the low hum of the air conditioner. She logged into the system using her father's secondary credentials, a privilege no one knew she still had. Her hands trembled slightly as she searched the archive folders. She found it within minutes: HR Consolidation, Report, Final, PDF. She opened it. The words blurred for a second as she read Personnel Streamlining Completed. Non-essential demographics reduced by 42% across front-facing positions. Her throat tightened. Non-essential demographics. That's how they defined people. She downloaded the file to a flash drive and sent a copy through an encrypted email account Ava had created for her. Just as the progress bar hit 100%, a voice came from the doorway. "Working late." Miss Morgan Celeste froze. Ethan Cole stood there, hands in his pockets, smiling the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Couldn't sleep," she said calmly. He stepped inside. "Strange, isn't it some nights? The office feels too quiet, almost guilty." She forced a small laugh. "You sound paranoid." "Paranoia keeps people in power alive," he said. He circled behind her, glancing at the computer screen. The file had just closed. "You've been loyal for a long time. Celeste, I'd hate to see that change." Her heart pounded, but she kept her face still. Loyalty isn't the same as obedience. "Ethan." He studied her for a moment longer, then smiled again. "Of course not. But sometimes they look similar from a distance." He walked out, his footsteps echoing down the corridor. Celeste waited a full minute before breathing again. Then she grabbed her coat and left through the service elevator. That night, at 2 a.m., Noah's phone buzzed, a message from Ava. "Got it. She did it," he exhaled, relief flooding through him, then fear. "Is she okay?" Ava replied. She didn't say, but the file is explosive. The phrase non-essential demographics alone could start a storm. The next morning, the glass room's walls shook with whispers. Word of the lawsuit had reached the staff. Ethan Cole called an emergency meeting. From the back of the crowded room, a busboy whispered to another, "They say someone from the inside leaked documents." Ethan stood at the front, voice cold and controlled. Let me be clear, Maison Hospitality will not tolerate slander, leaks, or disloyalty. If any of you think you can challenge this company, remember who signs your checks. His gaze lingered on Celeste. For just a moment, she saw the flicker of realization. He knew. She left the meeting early, pretending to take a call. Outside. She texted Noah. He suspects. Don't contact me for a few days. Noah stared at the message, his stomach twisting. He went to Ava's office that afternoon. She was printing copies of the report. Her hands steady, but her voice low. This is enough to trigger federal attention. I'll file the amendment tonight. What happens after that? Then, she said, they fight back, and they did. Within 24 hours, Maison's legal department launched a public statement calling the allegations a malicious smear campaign by a disgruntled former employee. They leaked an old disciplinary note about Noah fabricated, probably to make him look unstable. Reporters camped outside his building. Strangers shouted his name. He tried to keep calm, but the noise followed him everywhere. On the subway, people whispered. Online, his face appeared under headlines he didn't write. Ava stayed firm. Let them talk, she said. Every lie they tell adds one more reason for the truth to matter. But one evening, as Noah returned home, he noticed his apartment door slightly open. Inside, the place was a mess. Papers scattered, drawers pulled out, nothing stolen, just chaos. On the table, a single envelope. Inside was a note, stop before you lose more than your job. He sat down, slowly, heart pounding. For a moment, he almost laughed. It wasn't fear now. It was confirmation. They were scared too. He picked up his phone and called Ava. They broke in. There was silence on the other end. Then Ava said, "Then we're closer than I thought." That night, he couldn't sleep. He looked out the window at the endless lights of the city. Somewhere, Celeste was hiding. Somewhere, Ethan was planning his next move. And somewhere deep inside himself. Noah realized he was past the point of turning back. He whispered into the quiet, "You took everything from us. Now, I'll make sure the world knows what that looks like." It wasn't rage. It was something quieter, deeper, a kind of peace that comes when fear finally runs out. He closed his eyes, and the sound of the rain returned. Only this time, it didn't sound like sadness. It sounded like cleansing. The morning after the break-in, the city woke to headlines that screamed Noah Grant's name. Former waiter behind false racism allegations against billion-dollar empire, disgruntled employee orchestrates smear campaign, sources say. His phone buzzed endlessly. Unknown numbers, withheld callers, messages dripping with venom and pity. One read, "You're ruining people's livelihoods." Another, "Go back to where you belong." He threw the phone on the couch, sat down, and let the noise of it fade into the hum of the refrigerator. Outside his window, the city was still moving, indifferent. Somewhere down there, people were ordering lunch, laughing, living. The world didn't stop just because you were drowning. Ava Kim arrived 20 minutes later, raincoat still wet. "You need to stay calm," she said, tossing a folder onto the table. "This is standard corporate retaliation. They leak, they discredit, they distract." Noah rubbed his temples. "They're doing more than distracting. They're rewriting the story." "That's what they do," Ava said. "But we have something they don't, truth and evidence." He laughed bitterly. "Truth doesn't trend. Ava, She looked at him for a long moment. Then we make it trend. Her eyes were sharp, determined. She opened her laptop. We'll go public. Controlled interviews, verified documents. We tell the story before they bury it. You become the voice, not the victim. Noah hesitated. I'm not a spokesman. You're already the symbol, she said, whether you like it or not. He looked away, staring out the window. The rain streaked the glass like lines of ink. He didn't want to be a symbol. He wanted to go back to being invisible. But maybe that was the point. Maybe invisibility was what they counted on. He exhaled slowly. Okay, let's do it. That afternoon, they filmed the interview in Ava's cramped office. A local journalist sympathetic to workers' rights asked the questions. Noah sat stiff at first, his voice quiet, uncertain. But as he spoke about the glass room, about kindness mistaken for transgression, about watching his co-workers vanish one by one, something in him loosened. When he finished, the journalist's eyes were wet. People need to hear this, she whispered. Within 24 hours, the video hit 1 million views, then 2, then 5, comments flooded in. Finally, someone said it. I worked for Maison too. Same thing happened to me. This man just exposed every luxury company's dirty secret. But not all voices were kind. Some called him a liar. Others accused him of playing the race card. And beneath the noise, a colder silence, no word from Celeste. Ava tried calling her. No answer. Emails bounced back. Her apartment, according to the doorman, had been temporarily vacated. By the 3rd day, worry turned into dread. She's gone, Ava said quietly, staring at her phone. Either she's hiding or someone made her disappear. Noah felt something inside him twist. He remembered her voice in the cafe, her laugh when she said, "So is silence." She wouldn't run, he said, not after everything. Then we find her. Ava said. They started searching contacts, social media, old friends. Nothing. Celeste Morgan had vanished like smoke. Meanwhile, Maison Hospitality doubled down. Their PR team released a new statement. The company condemns all false claims. An internal review confirms 0 evidence of discrimination. Then, the kicker Ethan Cole appeared on a live morning show. Noah watched from his apartment, jaw tight, as Ethan sat under studio lights, looking calm, regretful, convincing. We're deeply saddened by the misinformation being spread, Ethan said. Our goal has always been inclusion and excellence. Unfortunately, a former employee misinterpreted company policies. We wish him well. The interviewer smiled sympathetically. So, the allegations are false completely, Ethan said. We have nothing to hide. Noah slammed the remote down. The TV cut into silence. Ava's voice behind him was steady but low. He's lying. And that calm tone of his, it's what keeps people believing. I can't just sit here while he paints me as the villain. Noah said. Then don't. Ava replied. Fight louder. The next day, she arranged a press conference in front of the courthouse. It wasn't grand, just a small podium, a handful of microphones, and a crowd of supporters holding signs that read, "Justice is served with dignity and luxury. Without humanity isn't luxury." Noah stood before them, heart pounding. The cameras clicked. He took a breath. My name is Noah Grant. I worked for Maison Hospitality for 3 years. I believed that if I worked hard, stayed polite, and gave my best, I'd be treated fairly. I was wrong. The crowd quieted. I was fired for helping a woman who had fallen. They said it was inappropriate contact. But what they really meant was, it looked wrong because of who I am, because of my skin, because kindness isn't supposed to come from someone like me in their world. He paused, his voice trembling but strong. This isn't just about me. It's about everyone who's ever been told they don't fit a brand. About the cooks, the cleaners, the servers who hold this city together while being told they're replaceable. A ripple of applause broke through. Someone shouted, "We're with you." Noah. He looked out over the crowd and saw faces. Black, brown, white, young, old, ordinary people who just wanted fairness. He continued, "They can buy headlines, they can lie on TV, but they can't erase what we all know is true. Dignity doesn't have a dress code." The applause grew louder, cameras flashed. For the first time, Noah didn't feel small. He felt seen. That night, the video of his speech went viral. Ethan's interview was forgotten within hours. Dignity has no dress code trended across the country. Restaurants began releasing statements promising reform. But Noah's relief was short-lived. At midnight, his phone rang. No caller ID. He answered. Hello, a woman's voice, shaky. Noah. It was Celeste. "Where are you?" he demanded. "I can't say. They're watching everything. Ethan confronted me yesterday. He knows about the files. I barely got out." "Are you safe for now?" she said. "Listen, there's something you don't know. The sale Maison isn't just selling to investors. They're laundering equity through shell companies tied to my father's offshore accounts. Ethan's covering for him. That's why they can't let this case go public." Noah's blood ran cold. "You have proof I do, but it's on a drive in my office. They locked it down after I left. If we can get it, this isn't just discrimination, it's corruption." Before he could respond, a loud noise echoed through the line. Celeste gasped, "Noah, I have to go. Don't call me. I'll reach you when I can." The call ended. Noah stood frozen, phone still pressed to his ear. The rain outside had started again, heavy, relentless. Ava found him an hour later, still sitting by the window. He told her everything. She listened, silent. "If she's right," Ava said finally, "then this isn't just a civil case. It's federal. We'd be going up against billionaires, politicians, international banks." Noah looked at her. "Then we go up." Ava smiled faintly, a mix of pride and fear. "You really don't know how to quit. Do you?" "No," he said quietly. "Not anymore." She placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then we move carefully. If Celeste's still out there, she'll find a way to get us that proof. Until then, we hold the line." Noah nodded, though his chest felt heavy. The rain beat harder against the glass, the sound of a storm building. He looked out over the city, the lights flickering, cars streaming like veins of gold through the dark, and whispered, "Whatever it takes." Because he finally understood this wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about truth. And truth, once spoken aloud, had a way of shaking even the tallest towers. For the next 3 days, New York moved as if nothing had happened. But for Noah Grant, every second felt stretched, heavy, and fragile like the pause before a string snaps. Celeste Morgan had vanished again. And this time, even the shadows seemed quieter. Ava Kim worked from her office day and night, connecting threads that shouldn't have existed: bank accounts, corporate subsidiaries, dummy companies buried in offshore records. Every time she found a lead, it pointed back to one name: Richard Morgan, Celeste's father, founder of Maison Hospitality Group. The corruption runs deeper than we thought. She told Noah one evening, voice hoarse from exhaustion. It's not just discrimination. They've been using staff layoffs to funnel money cutting payroll, then redirecting savings into fake consultant fees sent offshore. Noah stared at the screen in disbelief. So, every person they fired, every life they ruined, made someone richer. Ava finished, and Ethan's the gatekeeper. He protects Richard's name. Celeste's been chasing this for years without realizing how dangerous it really was. Noah leaned back, rubbing his temples. We have to find her. Ava nodded. I've reached out to an investigator I trust. She'll start digging quietly. By morning, that investigator, a sharp-eyed woman named Kara Liu, was sitting in Ava's office with a tablet full of satellite images, public records, and phone traces. Celeste used her father's corporate card 2 nights ago. Kara said, not for a hotel or flight, she bought gas in upstate New York, a small town called Coldwater Falls. Population maybe 1,000. Coldwater Falls. Noah repeated. Quiet place, Kara said. People go there to disappear. Ava glanced at Noah. We go. The drive took 4 hours. They followed the Hudson north. The city fading into long stretches of forest and road dusted with early autumn leaves. By dusk, they reached the outskirts of Coldwater Falls, a cluster of wooden houses, a diner, a post office, and not much else. Noah parked the car in front of the diner. A neon sign flickered above the door, Marla's Place, since 1952. Inside, the air smelled like coffee and fried onions. They took a booth. The waitress, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes, brought menus and water. Y'all just passing through, she asked. Looking for a friend, Noah said carefully. Young woman, mid-30s, dark hair, might have been driving a silver Lexus. Came through a few nights ago. The waitress thought for a moment. Yeah, I remember her. Sat right there by the window. Didn't say much. Paid in cash. Tipped well. Looked like she'd been crying. Do you know where she went? Ava asked. She left heading west, toward the lake cabins. There's an old fishing lodge up there used to be busy in the 90s. Now it's mostly empty. Noah's pulse quickened. Thank you. They drove another 10 minutes down a gravel road. The trees grew denser, the sky dimmer. At the end of the road, they found a cluster of weathered wooden cabins overlooking a still, black lake. One cabin had a faint light in the window. Noah got out first, the gravel crunching under his boots. He called softly, Celeste. No answer. He knocked once. The door creaked open. Inside, the cabin was quiet but warm. A fire flickered in the old stone fireplace, and sitting beside it, wrapped in a blanket, was Celeste. She looked up slowly, her face pale, eyes red from sleeplessness. Noah, she whispered. He crossed the room and knelt beside her. We thought something happened to you. It almost did, she said weakly. Ethan's men followed me for 2 days. I ditched the car in Poughkeepsie, switched buses twice. I didn't know where else to go. Ava entered behind him, relief softening her features. We found you through your card trail. You shouldn't have stayed alone. Celeste managed a faint smile. I didn't plan to. I just needed to think. Everything's spiraling faster than I imagined. Noah handed her a bottle of water. You said you had proof about your father. Celeste nodded. It's on a drive hidden in the office vault downtown. I tried to get back for it before I left, but Ethan changed all the codes. That drive has every transaction, every offshore payment linked to my father's shell companies. If we can get it, it'll destroy them. Ava exhaled slowly. Then we'll get it. Celeste shook her head. You don't understand. The vault's in the restricted floor, biometric access only, and Ethan's increased security since I disappeared. It's practically impossible without a direct link. Noah's eyes met hers. Unless we make them open it for us. Ava frowned. What do you mean? He stood up, pacing slowly. If we can get Ethan to access the files himself during a public audit or legal review, we can catch him in real time. But to do that, we need pressure. Media won't be enough. We need someone bigger watching. Ava's eyes widened. Federal regulators. Exactly. Noah said, if we can get them to issue a subpoena, he'll have to produce the documents himself. And if the hidden accounts are tied to Richard Morgan, he can't fake everything. Celeste looked at him, a flicker of hope breaking through her exhaustion. That could work, but how do we get them to listen? Ava smiled faintly. By making noise, the right kind of noise. Over the next 2 days, they worked from the cabin like fugitives with laptops. Ava drafted the legal motion for federal review. Celeste compiled every piece of correspondence she still had, and Noah handled the outreach, sending the press deeper stories, building momentum online, getting workers from other branches to speak up. The movement spread like wildfire. By the 3rd day, national media had picked up the story. News anchors debated the ethics of luxury branding and racial optics. Hashtags trended again. Serve with respect. Justice for Noah. Expose Maison. Maison Hospitality stock plummeted 12% in a week. Ethan Cole responded with another statement, cold, rehearsed, full of denial, but his eyes betrayed fatigue. Then, late one night, Ava's phone rang. This is Special Agent Rowe with the Federal Financial Crimes Division, the voice said. We received a report from Ms. Kim regarding potential money laundering under Maison Hospitality Group. We'd like to schedule a preliminary interview. Ava's eyes met Noah's across the cabin. It worked. Noah exhaled in disbelief. Celeste covered her mouth. Tears forming. You did it, she whispered. You actually did it, but the relief didn't last long. 2 hours later, headlights appeared on the road outside the cabin. Celeste froze. That's not the police. Noah peeked through the window. 2 black SUVs, idling. Ethan's men. He muttered. Ava shut the laptop, grabbed the flash drive. We need to move. They slipped out the back door into the woods. The rain had started again, thick and heavy. Their shoes sank into the mud as they ran toward the lake. Behind them, flashlights cut through the trees. Split up, Noah whispered. Meet at the boathouse. Celeste hesitated. No go. They darted through the darkness. The sound of branches snapping echoed like gunfire. Noah could hear footsteps closing in. He ducked behind a tree, breathing hard, watching one of the men pass by, tall, armed, radio clipped to his belt. When the man turned, Noah moved silently, hitting him with a fallen branch. The man dropped. Noah ran toward the lake. The boathouse appeared through the mist. Inside, Ava and Celeste were already there, dripping wet. They're sweeping the forest, Ava said breathlessly. We need to take the boat. Noah helped push the small motorboat into the water. They climbed in, and with a soft sputter, it started. The lake stretched ahead, dark and endless. Behind them, flashlights flickered at the shoreline. As they drifted into the fog, Celeste turned to Noah, her voice trembling. They'll come after us harder now. "I know," he said, "but now they know we won't stop." She looked at him, eyes shining with a mix of fear and admiration. "You could have walked away a long time ago." He smiled faintly. "I think walking away is what got us here. The boat cut through the mist, the cabin disappearing behind them. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled. The storm had officially begun. The storm that night felt endless. The rain came down in the sheets, slashing the lake's surface as the small motorboat cut through the darkness. Noah Grant's hands were tight on the wheel, his knuckles pale. Beside him, Celeste Morgan sat wrapped in a soaked blanket, her breath visible in the cold air. Ava Kim held the flash drive close to her chest as though it were the last piece of warmth in the world. Behind them, the lights from the shore flickered faintly, then vanished. The forest swallowed them whole. Noah didn't speak until they reached the far side of the lake, beaching the boat near a line of broken docks. "We walk from here," he said, voice low. "They won't risk following through the woods in this weather." They stumbled through the mud, feet sinking with every step. Branches whipped their faces. The rain turned the path into a stream. By the time they reached the road, the sky had begun to lighten with the faintest hint of dawn. Ava's phone buzzed weakly, one bar of signal. She opened a map. "There's a bus stop about a mile ahead," she said, wiping her face. "If we can get to the main highway, we can reach Albany by morning. Then we go." Noah said. The walk was quiet, except for their breathing and the crunch of gravel beneath their shoes. Every sound made Celeste flinch the wind, the rustle of trees, the faraway hum of a truck engine. When they finally reached the bus shelter, they looked like ghosts, soaked, shivering, and hollow-eyed. A single street lamp flickered above them. Celeste sat down, her voice barely a whisper. "I never thought it would come to this." Noah looked at her. "You knew what your father was capable of." "I knew," she said. "I just didn't want to believe it." For a moment, the only sound was the wind moving through the trees. Then Ava said softly, "Belief is a privilege. The rest of us survive by knowing." Celeste looked down, guilt flickering across her face. "You think I don't know that now?" Ava's expression softened. "I know you do, and that's why we're still here." The bus arrived half an hour later. They boarded silently, sitting near the back. The few passengers glanced at them briefly. 3 strangers with mud-stained clothes but didn't ask questions. In America, people had learned not to ask. Noah stared out the window as the trees blurred by. His mind kept replaying Celeste's words. "They're laundering through the layoffs." Every time he thought he'd found the core of the rot, another layer appeared. He turned to Ava. "When we get to Albany, what's next?" "We go to the federal office," she said. "Agent Rowe will meet us there. Once they have the evidence, they can issue warrants for both Ethan and Richard Morgan. And if Celeste's drive is still in the vault," Ava hesitated. "Then we'll need her father's biometric clearance or someone who can mimic it." Celeste spoke quietly. "His fingerprints are registered to my profile as well. It was a precaution years ago. I can open the vault." Noah nodded slowly. "Then we have one shot." The rest of the ride passed in silence. Celeste leaned her head against the window, eyes closed, and for a moment, Noah thought she might actually be asleep. But her lips moved faintly, whispering something he couldn't hear, a prayer, or maybe a memory. By the time they reached Albany, the rain had stopped. The morning air was sharp and cold. Cara Lou was waiting near the station in a rented SUV. "You're alive," she said with relief as they approached. "There's been chatter on the corporate channels Ethan's furious. He's claiming you stole proprietary documents." Ava smirked. He's not entirely wrong. Kara handed Ava a burner phone. "Agent Rose expecting you in 2 hours. But be careful. Maison's private security has been spotted along the interstate. I think they're trying to intercept you before you reach the city." Noah clenched his jaw. "Then we stay off the main road." They drove through back routes, winding highways, small town streets, dirt roads that barely held together. The tension inside the car was thick, but every now and then, Celeste would glance at Noah and offer a small, tired smile. Halfway through the drive, Ava's phone buzzed again, a message from an encrypted number. "The girl won't save you. Walk away before the storm hits." She showed it to Noah without a word. He didn't respond. When they arrived at the federal building, security guards checked their IDs twice before letting them in. Inside, everything was sterile, white walls, fluorescent lights, and the faint buzz of printers. Agent Rowe met them in a conference room. He was tall, calm, and wore the expression of someone who'd seen too much but forgotten none of it. "Ms. Kim," he said, shaking Ava's hand. "Mr. Grant, and you must be Ms. Morgan." Celeste nodded cautiously. Rowe opened a folder on the table. "We've reviewed the documents you sent. It's enough to begin formal proceedings, but not enough to prove financial crime. We'll need the original drive to confirm the transfers. That's locked in Maison's vault," Ava said, "but Celeste can access it." Rowe's brow furrowed. "You'd be walking into their headquarters during a federal probe. That's a risk I can't officially authorize." "Then don't," Noah said. "Just give us a chance." Rowe studied him for a long moment, then sighed. "You have 48 hours. After that, the investigation becomes public, and you'll lose any element of surprise." As they left the building, Celeste stopped in the parking lot, staring at the gray skyline. "If I do this," she said softly, "there's no coming back. My father will never forgive me." Noah looked at her. Maybe forgiveness isn't the point. She turned to him, eyes glistening. "Then what is freedom?" he said simply. "For you, for everyone he buried under his silence." Ava watched them quietly, then nodded. "We move tonight. Ethan won't expect us this soon." That night, they parked 2 blocks away from Maison's New York headquarters. The glass tower loomed above them, lit like a monument to arrogance. Security was tighter than ever, guards at every door, cameras sweeping the entrances. Kara's voice came through the earpiece. "North entrance has a maintenance shaft. It connects directly to the sublevel where the vault is located. You'll have 5 minutes before the next patrol." Ava adjusted her backpack. "Let's make them count." They slipped through the shadows, ducking under scaffolding and security lights. The shaft was narrow, cold, and smelled of metal and oil. Noah climbed first, then reached down to help Celeste. Her hand trembled slightly, but her grip was firm. Inside, the air was thick with the hum of machinery. The vault room was at the far end of a corridor lined with glass doors. Celeste pressed her hand to the biometric scanner. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the light turned green. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Ava moved quickly to the central terminal. "This is it," she whispered. "If the drive's still here." She opened the drawer. Inside, nestled in black foam, was a small silver device marked with a serial code. Celeste exhaled sharply. That's it. Noah grabbed it and slipped it into his jacket. Let's move. But as they turned, the lights above them flickered and then flooded the room. A voice echoed through the intercom, smooth, calm, and cruelly familiar. Leaving so soon, Ethan Cole stepped into view, flanked by 2 guards. He smiled, slow and sharp. I was wondering when the heroes would show up. Celeste froze. "Ethan, don't do this." "Oh, Celeste," he said softly, "you always had a taste for betrayal, but this stealing from your own family, that's beneath even you." Noah stepped forward. "Family doesn't own people. Ethan, it doesn't bury them for profit." Ethan's smile faded. "And what are you, Mr. Grant, the moral compass, the savior of the oppressed? Let me remind you, you were just a waiter. You were meant to serve." Something dark flickered in Noah's eyes. "Then let me serve you the truth." Before Ethan could react, Noah lunged forward, slamming the emergency lock on the control panel. The vault doors sealed shut with a metallic thud. "Run!" Noah shouted. Ava and Celeste bolted for the maintenance shaft as alarms blared. Guards shouted. Noah grabbed a fallen security baton, blocking the path long enough for them to escape. He turned one last time, meeting Ethan's furious gaze through the glass. "This isn't over," Ethan snarled. "It never is," Noah said and slipped into the shadows. They burst into the night air minutes later, breath ragged, hearts pounding. The flash drive was safe in Ava's pocket. Sirens wailed in the distance. As they ran through the alley, Celeste grabbed Noah's arm. "You could have been caught." He smiled faintly. "Wouldn't be the first time I was underestimated." Ava looked at them both, then at the skyline ahead. "We have the proof. Now let's make it count." Behind them, the tower loomed tall, gleaming, and trembling at its foundation. The chase was over. Now came the reckoning. By dawn, the city was waking to chaos. News helicopters circled above the Maison Hospitality headquarters, broadcasting images of police cruisers, flashing red and blue lights painting the sleek glass tower like a confession in color. Reporters gathered at the barricades, their microphones aimed toward the building's entrance. The world had begun to ask questions the company couldn't ignore anymore. Inside a small apartment across the Hudson River, Noah Grant sat at the edge of a sofa, drenched in exhaustion. On the table in front of him lay the silver flash drive, the one they had risked everything to retrieve. Ava Kim was pacing the floor, phone pressed to her ear. "Yes, Agent Rowe, we have the evidence, confirming serial code matches internal records. I'll send it within the hour." Celeste Morgan stood by the window, staring out at the city skyline. Her father's empire shimmered in the morning haze, but for the first time, she didn't see pride there. She saw rot. Ava ended the call and exhaled. "They're sending a task force to seize Mason's servers this afternoon. Once they decrypt the drive, Richard Morgan and Ethan Cole are done." Noah leaned back. "So this is it." Ava nodded, but there was no celebration in her voice. "It's the beginning of the end, not the end itself. They'll fight this, every inch." Celeste turned from the window, her voice soft but steady. "Let them. The truth's already out there now." Ava smiled faintly. "Not yet, but it will be." They worked in silence for the next hour, compiling the data, verifying timestamps, preparing it for submission. The drive contained years of records, fraudulent transactions, false tax filings, coded memos. Every line was another piece of the puzzle, a pattern of greed and discrimination hiding in plain sight. When Ava hit send, she looked up at Noah. "Once I upload this, there's no going back. Your name, Celeste's name, they'll be everywhere." Noah nodded slowly. "Maybe that's the point." Celeste's eyes met his. "Are you ready for that kind of attention?" He smiled faintly. "I've spent most of my life being unseen. I think I can handle the other extreme." Ava pressed send. The file zipped through encrypted channels straight to the Federal Bureau of Financial Crimes. A few minutes later, her phone buzzed. A message from Roe received, "Prepare for statement." "Statement?" Noah asked. Ava nodded. "They'll want you to go public. The government needs a human face for the story, a witness they can trust." Noah's chest tightened. "You mean a symbol?" Celeste stepped closer. "Not a symbol, a voice." He hesitated, then sighed. "All right, but I'm not giving them a headline. I'm telling them the truth." That afternoon, the three of them walked into a federal press briefing room surrounded by a sea of flashing lights and murmuring journalists. The hum of cameras filled the air. Ava stood beside Noah, steady as always, while Celeste sat a few seats back, her presence quietly powerful. Agent Rowe stepped to the podium first. "This morning, the Federal Bureau of Financial Crimes initiated an investigation into Maison Hospitality Group for alleged violations of labor and discrimination laws, as well as financial misconduct. The investigation was prompted by evidence provided by former employee Noah Grant, attorney Ava Kim, and Ms. Celeste Morgan." Gasps rippled through the room. The mention of Celeste's name, Richard Morgan's daughter, hit like a thunderclap. Rowe stepped aside. "Mr. Grant, if you would." Noah approached the podium. The lights were blinding, the air thick. He adjusted the microphone. "I didn't come here to destroy anyone," he began, his voice calm. "I came here to tell the truth." The room fell silent. I was a waiter. I served people who thought service was about silence, who thought dignity could be priced on a menu. But I learned that when silence protects injustice, it stops being polite, it becomes part of the harm. He paused, scanning the crowd. "I lost my job for helping someone who fell. I didn't lose it because I did wrong. I lost it because someone decided I didn't look like the kind of person who belonged in their world. And for too long, I believed them." A few reporters lowered their pens, just listening now. "But I'm done believing," Noah said, his voice firm. "This isn't just about one restaurant or one company. It's about a system that teaches people like me to stay quiet. And I think it's time we stop whispering." The room erupted in applause. As they left the building, Celeste caught up to him. "That was brave," she said quietly. Noah gave a half smile. "You were braver. You went against your own blood." Her eyes softened. "Sometimes you have to lose where you came from to find where you belong." That night, every major network carried the story. Maison Empire collapses under scandal. Heiress turns whistleblower. Former waiter sparks federal probe. But the most shared headline came from a small online outlet that had interviewed Noah weeks before. "Dignity has no dress code." Within days, Richard Morgan's assets were frozen. Ethan Cole was arrested trying to leave the country. Maison's board of directors issued a public apology, though no apology could undo what years of quiet prejudice had built. Noah became the face of a new movement, not by design, but by truth. Workers across the service industry began speaking out. Restaurants pledged policy reforms. Advocacy groups formed overnight. One evening, as the city lights shimmered over the river, Noah, Ava, and Celeste sat at a small rooftop cafe, no press, no speeches, just the three of them watching the skyline flicker. "It's strange," Ava said softly. "We fought so hard to bring the truth to light, and now that it's out there, it feels quiet." Celeste smiled faintly. "Quiet can be peace too." Noah sipped his coffee, or the start of something new. He looked out over the city, the same city that had once looked down on him, and for the first time, he didn't feel small. He turned to Celeste. "What will you do now?" She hesitated, then said, "My father's gone. The company's gone. But maybe that's what it took for me to start again. I've been thinking about building something honest this time. Something that belongs to everyone who was ever told they didn't fit the brand." Noah's eyes lit up with quiet amusement. "Sounds familiar." Celeste laughed softly. "Maybe I learned from the best." Ava smiled at them both. "You know, I think the world's ready for a restaurant that serves justice with its meals." Noah chuckled. "We'll see." He didn't know it then. But that rooftop conversation would become the seed of something bigger, a new kind of restaurant, a new kind of story, a place that didn't just serve food, but restored something people didn't know they were hungry for belonging. The next morning, he stood in front of a small empty space on 118th Street in Harlem. The walls were cracked, the windows dusty, but to him, it felt alive with possibility. He pulled a folded blueprint from his pocket, Celeste's sketch. Across the top was written in bold letters, "Umami Soul." It was her idea, a fusion of Japanese precision and Southern heart. Every dish, every table, a story of balance. Noah smiled, running a hand over the worn brick. "Let's make it real," he whispered. Ava arrived with coffee and a box of old files. "Paperwork's ready," she said. "The building's yours." Celeste followed a moment later, holding a small wooden sign. She turned it around. Engraved letters read, "Umami Soul, where everyone belongs." Noah felt something rise in his chest, quiet and full. "Ready?" Ava asked. He nodded, "Always," and as the sun rose over Harlem, painting the streets gold, Noah Grant unlocked the door to the future. It wasn't revenge, it wasn't fame, it was healing. And for the first time, the man once fired for kindness finally understood what true success meant, not being seen above others, but standing beside them. The scent of cedar wood filled the air as sunlight streamed through the tall windows of Umami Soul. The restaurant was finally alive. What had once been an abandoned space on 118th Street was now transformed into something warm, modern, and full of quiet grace. Japanese paper lanterns hung from the ceiling, their soft glow casting gentle shadows on the deep brown walls. Every detail, every chair, every plate had been chosen with care. Noah Grant stood near the entrance, adjusting the collar of his shirt. The morning rush was still hours away, but staff were already setting tables, testing the sound system, polishing glassware. He could feel the pulse of something new in every movement. Ava Kim walked in carrying a box of printed menus. You'd think, after everything we've been through, opening a restaurant would be easy, she said with a tired laugh. Noah smiled faintly. Easy never made history. She placed the box on the counter and handed him one of the menus. Across the top, in soft cursive, it read, "Umami Soul, where everyone belongs." He looked at it for a moment. "You really think people will come?" Ava raised an eyebrow. "After what you've done, they'll line up down the block. You didn't just expose corruption, you gave people hope. and everyone wants a taste of hope. From the kitchen, Celeste Morgan emerged in an apron, her hair tied back, a streak of flour on her cheek. The chef says the kitchen's ready. He's almost in tears about the equipment. Noah laughed. Good tears, I hope. Celeste nodded. He said no kitchen has ever been this diverse. People from 7 countries, all cooking side by side. Ava leaned against the counter, smiling. That's the point, isn't it? Noah looked around. The space wasn't luxurious, but it was beautiful in its sincerity. Every table had a small white blossom resting in a glass bowl, sakura petals mixed with tiny sprigs of rosemary, a blend of cultures that somehow fit perfectly. Do you ever think about l'argent? Celeste asked suddenly. He turned to her. Sometimes. Not because I miss it, but because I remember who I was there. The quiet one, Ava said. The invisible one. Noah corrected softly. And now, he gestured around them. Now, we built a place where no one disappears. Celeste smiled. Then let's make sure it stays that way. By noon, the first guests began to arrive. Some were locals, families, neighbors, artists. Others were people Noah had never met but recognized from their faces: journalists, former co-workers, even a few industry veterans curious to see what the man who challenged Maison hospitality would do next. He greeted each one personally. Some offered congratulations. Others whispered quiet words of thanks. One woman, middle-aged and wearing a waitress uniform, pressed his hand. You made us proud, she said. The kitchen buzzed with rhythm chopping, sizzling, the melody of voices mixing languages. At the pass, Chef Takeda, a compact man with calm eyes, plated a dish of seared salmon glazed with soy and honey, topped with collard greens. Soul meets umami, he said in his thick accent, smiling. Noah tasted it. It was perfect. As lunch service began, the restaurant filled quickly. Laughter and conversation wove through the air. The sound was music alive, free, unpretentious. Celeste floated between tables, greeting guests, checking details. For the first time in years, she wasn't a Morgan or an heiress. She was simply part of something good. Ava sat at the bar with her laptop open, managing press requests. CNN wants an interview next week. She told Noah when he passed by, "They're calling you the man who changed fine dining." He chuckled. Let's just get through today first. Midway through the afternoon, as sunlight slanted through the windows, an older woman entered. Her gray hair was tied neatly, her posture proud. Noah recognized her instantly. Ms. Harris, he said, stunned. The woman smiled warmly. Still remember me? Noah. She had been his first supervisor at L'Argent, the only person who had ever treated him like an equal. She had been fired years before the scandal broke. I saw your story, she said, her voice trembling slightly. I cried. I didn't think anyone would ever fight back. Noah swallowed hard. You taught me to keep my head up, even when people wanted me to bow. She smiled. Looks like you taught the world that lesson now. He guided her to a seat near the window. Dinner's on me. Always. As she sat, her eyes roamed the room, shining with quiet pride. Later that evening, when the dinner rush faded into a soft murmur, the three of them, Noah, Celeste, and Ava, sat together at the last table, surrounded by the scent of jasmine tea and roasted sesame. Celeste raised her cup. To beginnings. Ava added, to the noise we made. Noah smiled. To everyone who refused to stay silent, they clinked cups. For a moment, none of them spoke. The noise of the city drifted through the open door, the honk of taxis, the laughter of people walking home, the pulse of New York continuing as if nothing had changed, even though everything had. Celeste leaned back, looking thoughtful. "My father called this city a machine," she said. "He said if you don't feed it money, it eats you alive. But I think he was wrong." "How so?" Noah asked. She smiled softly. "Maybe it's not a machine. Maybe it's a garden. It just depends on what kind of seeds you plant." Noah nodded slowly. "Then I guess we're gardeners now." As the night deepened, the restaurant grew quiet again. The last guests lingered over dessert, reluctant to leave. Outside, a small crowd had gathered by the window, reading the sign. Some took pictures, some smiled softly and kept walking. Inside, Noah turned off the lights one by one until only the glow from the paper lanterns remained. He stood there a while, soaking it in. Ava approached, her voice gentle. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" He nodded. Not perfect, but real. Celeste joined them, arms crossed loosely. "That's enough." He looked at her. "No, it's more than enough." As they stepped outside, the cool air wrapped around them. Across the street, a homeless man sat against a wall, humming softly. Noah crossed over, handed him a bag with leftover food, and smiled. The man looked up. "God bless you, brother." Noah nodded. "We're all brothers tonight." He walked back to the restaurant. For the first time in years, his chest didn't feel heavy. The ghosts of L'Argent, of Ethan, of Richard Morgan, all of them had faded into the distance, replaced by something purer, something still growing. Before heading home, he stood at the doorway, looking up at the glowing sign, Umami Soul. He whispered quietly to himself, "May it never forget where it came from." And as the wind brushed against the street, carrying laughter and the faint scent of miso and rosemary, Noah Grant realized that this simple moment of peace was what he had been fighting for all along. Not revenge, not victory, but the chance for everyone, everywhere, to finally have a place where they could stand tall, breathe freely, and be seen. 2 years passed, and New York changed in ways that only time and truth could measure. The city was still noisy, impatient, alive, but something softer had taken root in its rhythm. You could hear it in the way people lingered longer at small restaurants, in the way young chefs talked about fairness as much as flavor, in the way workers began to believe that kindness could be power too. At the heart of it all stood Umami Soul. What had started as one small restaurant on 118th Street had become something of a legend, not for its menu, but for its message. Every table told a story, every dish was a bridge. On any given night, you could find a jazz musician sharing a meal with a Japanese calligrapher, a former dishwasher teaching a college student how to make miso broth, a mother and son celebrating their first dinner after months of hardship. For Noah Grant, every night felt like both a homecoming and a quiet responsibility. He had never wanted to be famous, but his face had become familiar. People stopped him on the street, thanking him not for the food, but for what it represented. One afternoon, he sat by the front window, reviewing a letter. It was handwritten in careful script. "Dear Mr. Grant, my father worked at L'Argent when you did. He was fired after speaking up about discrimination. He never stopped believing that someone would make it right. Last week, we came to your restaurant." He cried. He said the world finally caught up with his hope. Thank you for making him feel seen again." Noah folded the letter slowly, eyes glistening. He didn't need awards or headlines. This was enough. In the kitchen, Chef Takita was teaching a new apprentice how to balance flavors. Sweetness and salt, tenderness and strength. Cooking, he said, is like living. If everything's easy, it's bland. Struggle makes flavor. Celeste Morgan walked in with a binder full of design sketches. The second branch of Umami Soul was finally under construction, this one in Seattle. "We'll need your final approval on the layout," she said, setting the binder down. Noah smiled. "I trust your instincts." She arched an eyebrow. "You said that last time, and we ended up with 20 lanterns instead of 10. He laughed, "And people loved them." She smiled too. "They loved you, Noah. You just don't see it." Ava Kim entered moments later, holding 2 cups of coffee and a folder of legal documents. "The nonprofit registration came through," she said. "Soul Foundation is official." Celeste beamed. "So it's really happening?" Ava nodded. "Free culinary training for underprivileged youth, funded by restaurant profits. First class starts in a month." Noah looked between them. "We're really doing this." Ava smiled. "You're doing this. I'm just making sure the paperwork doesn't get you arrested." They laughed together, the kind of laughter that came from shared scars and survival. As evening approached, the restaurant filled again. The hum of conversation blended with the faint notes of a saxophone near the door. The lights dimmed slightly, creating that warm, golden glow that made strangers feel like family. A man in a suit approached the counter, hesitating before speaking. "Are you Noah Grant?" Noah looked up. "Yes." The man nodded nervously. "I worked for Maison Hospitality once. I left when the scandal broke. I wanted to say, I'm sorry. I didn't stand up when I should have." Noah studied him for a long moment, then offered a small smile. "You're standing now. That's what matters." The man's shoulders eased, his eyes wet with gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered. After he left, Celeste came over quietly. "You didn't have to be kind." Noah shrugged. "Maybe not, but the world's had enough punishment. It's time for healing." Later that night, when the crowd thinned, Ava found Noah outside, sitting on the curb with his sleeves rolled up, watching the city lights shimmer on the wet pavement. "You ever think about how far we've come?" she asked. He nodded slowly. "Sometimes I still feel like that waiter cleaning glasses in the back room." She smiled. "Maybe that's a good thing. Keeps you grounded." He turned to her. "You ever regret it? Taking on the case? Putting your name in the fire?" Ava thought for a moment. "No, because sometimes justice doesn't look like a courtroom. Sometimes it looks like a full restaurant, and people laughing." He chuckled softly. "That's the kind of law I can live with." Inside, Celeste was adjusting the lighting over the bar when a young girl approached, barely 16, wearing an apron too big for her. "Ms. Morgan," she said shyly. "Chef said you wanted to see me." Celeste smiled. "Yes, Yuki. You've been doing great in the kitchen. How are you liking the program?" The girl's eyes lit up. "I've never been in a place like this. Back home, people didn't think I could do much. But here, everyone treats me like I matter." Celeste knelt slightly, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Because you do." From his seat by the window, Noah watched the exchange quietly. Moments like that small, ordinary kindnesses meant more than the grand victories ever did. As the night wound down, he locked the front door and stood for a while in the empty space, listening to the echoes of laughter fading into memory. He remembered the night it all began, the rain, the stranger, the mistake that wasn't really a mistake. He remembered how helpless he had felt back then, how invisible, and now, standing in the quiet glow of the restaurant he built, he realized something the world hadn't changed overnight. But it had changed, because people had. The next morning, he visited his old neighborhood in Brooklyn. The streets were the same, but they felt different now, less like a maze, more like a map of where he'd come from. He stopped at a small corner diner and ordered coffee. The waitress, middle-aged and kind-eyed, recognized him instantly. "You're that guy from the news," she said, smiling. "The restaurant man." He laughed. "I guess I am." She poured his coffee. "You made us all proud. You know, my son wants to work for you one day." Noah smiled, warmth spreading through him. "Tell him to come by. We're always hiring good hearts." When he left, he passed a mural painted on the side of a building. It showed a man standing in the rain, holding out his hand to help someone up. Beneath it were the words, "Kindness is strength." He stopped for a long time, staring at it. Then he smiled and walked on. Weeks later, Umami Soul celebrated its 2-year anniversary. The line stretched down the block. Reporters called it a cultural landmark, but Noah just saw it as a family gathering. Celeste gave a short speech before dinner. "We built this place not to erase pain, but to prove that beauty can grow from it," she said, and it did. Applause filled the room. Noah stood at the back, eyes wet, hands steady. When the music started, Ava leaned over and whispered, "You should be up there." He shook his head. "They don't need to see me. They need to see each other." She smiled. "That's why it worked. Noah, because you never made it about you." Later that night, as the final guests left and the lights dimmed, Noah stood alone in the restaurant, tracing the wood of the counter with his fingers. He whispered softly to the empty room, "Thank you." Maybe he was thanking the city, maybe the universe, maybe himself. Outside, snow began to fall slow, gentle flakes landing on the windows, melting into light. Noah stepped out into the street, tilting his head toward the sky. For the first time, he didn't feel like he was chasing redemption. He was already living it. And somewhere in the distance, the city seemed to whisper back, carrying the echo of every voice he'd ever stood up for, soft, certain, eternal, where everyone belongs. Noah's journey teaches us something deeply human, that kindness is power, even when it costs us. The world often tells us to harden our hearts to protect ourselves, to look away, to survive. But true strength isn't about armor. It's about empathy. It's about the courage to stand for what's right, even when the room turns against you. In every workplace, every home, every street corner, there are silent moments when we must decide who we are. Noah chose compassion over fear, and it changed not only his destiny, but the world around him. This story reminds us that justice isn't born from anger, but from persistence and humanity. That the smallest act, a helping hand, a kind word can ignite change larger than we can ever imagine. For everyone who's ever been overlooked, dismissed, or told you don't belong, remember this: your worth is not defined by where you stand, but by how you rise. May Noah's story inspire you to believe again in fairness, in love, and in the quiet power of doing good. Thank you for watching and for sharing this journey with us. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe so that more people can hear stories that remind us all of one simple truth: human kindness still changes the world.